All right, hello and welcome back to the Jamal MMA series and Merry Christmas. Today we are joined by a man. It's been a long time coming, let me just say. 7-0, reigning and soon to be defending Cage Wars middleweight champion. In my opinion, one of the most talented fighters I've ever seen in the sport of MMA. My favourite fighter right now, Christian Leroy Duncan. How are you doing, man?
Yeah, man, Jamal, I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm well. How are you?
I'm good, man. I should say this shows how well worked this guy is. This is Christmas, and he's spending his time the Christmas Day doing this for me. I appreciate it so much, man. Like I said, so
Fair thing.
let oh good man. So let's get into what you're actually dealing with next week. It's Jesse Taylor, a very serious opponent, a long game. First thing I wanted to ask you about Jesse Taylor is what he's never been knocked out in his entire career. You're obviously a knockout artist. If you were the first guy to knock out Jesse Taylor, what does that mean to you, and what does that say about how strong your striking is?
I think it would. Well, obviously, you never know how the fight's gonna go, but if it did happen, I think it will kind of speak for itself. You know, he's a very experienced fighter. I would say probably one of the most experienced fighters on the planet at this point. How long he's been in where he's been, how long he's been in the game as well. The opponents that he's fought against. Yeah, I'd say he's one of the most experienced fighters on the planet right now. So it would be, yeah, it would be a great win. Be a great win under the belt.
Definitely, man. I was about to just rattle off some of the names, like Luke Rockhold, David Branch, Hector Lombard, CB Dolly, veterans of the game. Something I want to put in perspective, for people who might not be very aware of this matchup, is the difference in experience. This is such a crazy stat, but when Jesse was preparing for his very first appearance on The Ultimate Fighter, you were only 12 years old. And then when he was preparing for his very first MMA fight, you were only 8. And it's crazy how things can work out in the sport and how guys can meet at this point in their career. Do you ever think about stuff like that, about how the age of your opponents and stuff and how it matches up throughout your career?
It's a good question. Until you mentioned it there, I wouldn't really say it's something I've thought deeply about. I mostly watch them as a fighter. I don't really go into them. Those kind of details are irrelevant. You know, it's more their style and how they fight, and how they put things together in the cage, which is what I pay more attention to. But that's an interesting point. That is an interesting point.
So one of the more known facts about you is that you used to play basketball, and in transition from basketball to MMA, were there any key skills in basketball that you found very useful transition to MMA?
Yeah, I'll say the two key things that stick out for me are footwork and the creativity of basketball. So kind of the freedom, like a lot of the players I used to watch growing up playing basketball, I like their style because of how freely they move and the kind of the body control, the athleticism and the footwork that they had. And I just like to play around and just create my own kind of moves off of those foundations that I used to watch, basically. And I would say, yeah, that's one key skill that when I come into MMA, that transitions across well. Yeah, just like to have fun with what I do, basically. I like to have fun.
Definitely, man. The next thing I was going to say was you often describe yourself as like you're free, you're able to express yourself, you're very creative in the octagon. It's almost like you're an artist painting a picture in your fights, but every painting has a name. If you could name the Christian Leroy Duncan fighting style, what would you call it?
See, the fighting style?
Yep, your own kind of fighting style that you've created throughout your career.
That's a good question. I like that question too. I always say my style is a kind of a switch style. I switch up when I'm in the cage. I switch up depending on the opponent, and I switch up just depending on how I'm feeling in the moment. Yeah, I would say it's a very switch style that I have.
Though this is actually so jarring for me because I've spent so much time
Right.
like watching your filming stuff and it be
Yeah.
actually like talking to the man himself. It's very cool. But like you say, you use a lot of like underutilized tools in MMA, like the teep tick and stuff. Very good stuff, man. Next thing I wanted to move on to was I was watching one of your interviews on Spotify with Ed Draper, and you're talking about learning different languages and stuff. And I think he said after you were learning to speak Urdu, and also more interestingly, you were learning to speak Polish as well. Was there any reason that you chose to learn to speak Polish? I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah. So where I'm from in Gloucester, it's a very mixed community. Very mixed community. And I have a lot of friends, close friends as well, that speak Urdu. So I just decided to start learning just to communicate with them and potentially with their family as well, just on a different kind of level, just to understand things a bit better. And it's just interesting to me to learn languages. Same the reason with Polish as well. Where I'm from, there's a big Polish community as well. I have a lot of Polish friends. We have a lot of Polish guys that train at our gym, guys and ladies and males. And yeah, just around my city, there's a very diverse city. So yeah, those are the two I'm with at the moment, and yeah, Arabic's on that list as well.
Very interesting stuff, man. Definitely a busy guy. Back to the fight in general, it seems like the main criticism of your game, which I think is quite unfair, is that we don't really know how he looks on the ground and stuff. But you look at the second fight with Will Curry, which would be my biggest example. Your jiu-jitsu and the scrambles in the second fight with Will Curry, and then the takedown defence against Jai and Marion. Do you feel like people really do underestimate how good your grappling game is, especially just because you're known as like the knockout guy in general?
Yeah, I think they have no other option other than to question, because they haven't seen. You can't really go off of things until you see them. You know, they don't train with me. They don't see how we do things in the gym. You know, they haven't seen me at certain competitions, so they wouldn't know until they see it. But I feel once it's come out, once it's brought out, and once it's seen, then those questions will be answered in time.
There's definitely a growing fan base for you in the MMA community. See more and more people posting about you on Instagram and stuff. There's I don't know if you're aware of him. Do you know who the MMA guru is?
No, I'm not familiar. I'm not familiar.
So yeah, he's from London. He's got like I think like 60k subscribers on YouTube. A pretty big name in the world of MMA. Very well known in that scene. And he was asked one of his live streams if he could start up like a management company in MMA, who would be the first fighter he would sign? And immediately said you, because in his words he said that you're guaranteed at least to be top 10 in the UFC. And I'm talking about these guys. I'm asking, have you seen this guy Christian Leroy Duncan? And the second they look at your fight film, they're like, this guy is special, this guy's different. Do you feel like that fan base is slowly growing now, they're becoming more popular in Cage Warriors?
I'm seeing a lot of support. Definitely seeing a lot more support. Especially in my city where I'm from, of Gloucester. It's a because it's not like an overly large or a largely populated city. It's quite a close-knit community. So a lot of people know a lot of people. So yeah, the support base here is it's great. It's great, and like you said, it's starting to kind of bleed out into other areas of the UK and abroad as well, just because of people that I've met abroad. You know, I support them. So for example, when I went over to train at like Jackson Wing, when I've been to California, I went to Thailand. So you just get to know people, you know, and you support them and they support you back, and then kind of they're feeding off of each other's kind of support base, you know. But yeah, man, it's definitely growing. It's definitely growing. And it's always good to have that kind of support behind you, man. It means a lot.
I was wondering that because I've seen a couple of guys like Darian Weeks and Davian Franklin following you, and I was wondering what the connection was there. So that makes a lot of sense now. I've actually
Darian I met at one of the IMAF tournaments. This was in 2017 actually. And then we got talking from there. And I went out to Jackson Wink in 2019. And he actually trains there for his camps. So I dropped him a message, and then we ended up linking up out there. And we got some training in together out there as well. And then obviously he went on to sign for the UFC and so on. But yeah, man, he's a great guy.
I was going to say as well, I was going through your Instagram, was there a point where you met up with Chuck Liddell at some point to train with him?
Yeah. So my head coach, Mark Weir, see Mark the Wizard Weir.
Legend.
Yeah, definitely. And still to this day. He used to train back in the day with Chuck Liddell and John Hackleman. So when Chuck had his camps, like Mark would fly out and train with them guys there. They were quite close training partners. So Mark would fly out and travel with them, kind of go to the events and with the behind the scenes and so on, and stay with them. So he took us out there back in I think it was around 2018. I think it was. I was still early in my amateur days. I think it was pre-IMAF as well. But he took us out there, a few of the guys from the gym. And we went out there. We stayed with John Hackleman, Chuck's head coach. He's got like a outhouse, and we kind of stayed in his house outside. And the training was intense. And then he took us on our last week there. We stayed for 2 or 3 weeks. And on our last day there, he took us out to LA and took us to Chuck's. Hello?
Oh yeah, sure. I think are you good? You hear me now?
Yeah. I hear you.
So good, man. Okay, just carry on the end, but there was only the last little bit that went.
Yeah, so he took us on our last day. He took us out to LA, and he took us to Chuck's house where he was living at the time. And yeah, Martin introduced us, and we got to spend some time with him. He showed us around his house. He talking to us about MMA, and then we went out for food. It's like a local Mexican restaurant. And yeah, that was a crazy experience for the time, man. So I was only just starting in MMA more or less, maybe a couple of years in, and then we got to meet the Iceman, Chuck Liddell. It was crazy, man. Very humble guy, down to earth as well. Great guy.
I've heard he's a very humble guy. I can imagine how eye-opening that would be for someone early in the career to meet like that. But funnily enough, my next question was about Mark Weir, an absolute legend of the UK scene. Did a lot for British fighters and like black British fighters in the UFC going forward as well, specifically. How has his style affected yours? Because you watch his old fights, you can see the kind of blueprints where it all came from. You can see how maybe he passed down some information to you. What are some of the biggest things that you've learned from Mark the Wizard Weir over the years?
I would say a high percentage, man. A lot of it has taught me. Not only in the cage, but also outside of the cage. Letting me know that the MMA world's a lot bigger than just what you're doing in the gym. It's what you do outside of the gym as well, which has a big effect on how your career goes. Which was very helpful and definitely made a difference in the trajectory that we're on now.
I think we're going to see more people start to follow the game plan that you and Mark set out by taking more amateur fights as an MMA fighter. Going through IMAF, you've seen guys like you, Kieran Clark over in Bellator, Mohamed Akayev go through IMAF. That really does give a good pathway for these young guys to come through. How much did that help you getting those, I think it was almost 20 or so amateur fights? How much did that help you going forward into the pro career?
Yeah, immensely. I would say without it, I would have learned certain lessons I learned within the amateur career at a later stage, which then could have resulted in the professional career not going as it has. So you make a lot of the mistakes, you make a lot of the lessons early, and you're not only doing it against kind of you could say inexperienced guys, you're doing it against high level experienced guys at the top of the level in their country that they're living from. So they're gonna pose different kind of threats that you wouldn't get necessarily say where you're from, because every kind of country or area has their own style. In any sport that you see, everyone has their own kind of style. So when you go to the IMAFs, you get a style that you're not familiar with, which when you go to the world class level, such as UFC, Bellator and Cage Warriors, so on, you're going to come across guys that are not from your area or not from where you're from and bring a different kind of style. So it's good to get experience and find those, put the pieces together from the puzzle and learn your lessons early rather than later, and that give you a big boost going forward into your pro career.
Very good stuff, man. To take you back in time a little bit, I'm sure you've been asked about this finish to death, but it's hard to pick out what your flashiest finish is. But as a pro, I think you'd probably go with the Lucas Marcinkowski fight. I remember you talking about how he set up that spinning back hit. You could see that it was cornering off to a certain angle every time you exited from an exchange. When you land a big strike like that spinning back kick, how quickly do you realise that, that's landed, he's went down? Is it kind of a slow process, or is it immediately when you land that kick, you're like, I've got him with that one quite badly?
I think the way he reacted, because it wasn't kind of lights out. It wasn't.
Yeah, he shelled up, yeah.
He shelled. So I was kind of seeing he's going back towards the cage. So I was eyeing up to see what his reaction was going to be, and then he kind of collapsed from there. So that's when the instinct kicked in to kind of finish it. But yeah, you'll notice, you'll see when your opponent's kind of the best way vulnerable, and then you just capitalize, take advantage of that.
Yeah, one day I'll do a video breaking down your fight style because it's so unique. The way you kind of pull about with your hands sometimes and the side kicks and stuff, it's amazing. A couple more fun questions here. I've actually got a fan question. One of my mates is a very big fan of yours, and what he wants to know is, at your fight with Dimitrov, I've got to see the custom Gymshark CLD shirts. Is there anything in the works here? Are we going to get some CLD merch coming soon for the CLD fans in the new year?
Man, I think, you never know. You never know what's around the corner, man. As always, there's exciting things around every corner. So we'll see what happens. And we'll see in time.
I'll be looking forward to that. Your fight with Dimitrov wrapped up just a couple hours before we seen the middleweight title change hands, Alex Payne and Israel Adesanya. It seemed like those two are going to meet again, second time in MMA, fourth time overall. How do you think that fight goes now with all the history, and it's even been added on back in November? How do you think that fight goes between those two?
In the full fight,
Yep.
I think it's gonna be another banger, another exciting fight. You never know. You never know how it's gonna go. I think the most recent fight was close again. It happened. What happened in one of the previous ones happened again in this one, where he hurt Alex early, and then kind of was saved by the bell. And then, but Alex is he's a weathered guy. He's a weathered fighter. You know, he'll fight through the storm. He can take punishment and still keep coming forward. And I think that kind of gave him the advantage on Adesanya in the later rounds where he started to tire. And obviously the damage he was doing to his legs was impressive too.
Yeah, people. People always talk about, like, I think people felt like Adesanya was completely dominating the fight, and then obviously when he got caught, but Bahia did have a lot of good moments in that fight of his own. This might seem like a bit of a silly question,
Can
but...
you hear me, yeah?
Yeah, I can hear you, bro.
Yeah.
I can hear you, bro. That's all good. What I was going to say was, this might sound like a bit of a silly question, but if you were ever to fight Alex Bahia, is there a part of you where you think, I want to strike with this guy? Or are you thinking, I should probably go for a takedown pretty early on here, I might not want to risk it? Or are you generally thinking, I'm a better striker than this guy and I've adapted more?
Yeah, you go into the fight believing in your abilities, man. And I think against any opponent, you should be confident in your own abilities. And it's good to test yourself in all areas, you know. If somebody's strong in that area, you might want to just, dip your foot in the water and see how you get on in that area, you know. So yeah, I'll take the fight of anybody wherever it happens to go, whether it's their strength or their weakness.
I was wondering, because you've went on record saying that you're a bit of an Israel Adesanya fan. He's been at some Cage Bar shows. I remember he hung out with Dominic Wood once. Has he ever reached out to you to say, like, good stuff, man?
No, not at all. Not at all.
That surprised me. I thought he would have. One thing I do have to bring up is your very excellent choice of walkout songs throughout your career. So you can correct me if I'm wrong here. I think for your first 4 Cage Wars fights, you walked out to Fly Team, and against Justin Moore, it was The Message by Gripper. Then one of my favourite ones was the Kanye West one. It had like the kind of opera choir at the start, faded into the real song. And last time out, it started off, I think it was Scarface, and then it faded into Meek Mill, Push It to the Limit. Yeah. How do you come up with these different walkout songs? Like, what inspires you to do them? Because they've all been pretty good, I'm being completely honest. That's very excellent choices right there.
It's kind of depending on how you're feeling on either the lead up to the camp, throughout the camp, and the final preparations. With my first few fights, I always had one of my closest friends, one of his songs. So I always played that when I walked out for my first few fights, and I didn't change it, but if you'll probably notice now, I was telling you, but within the songs that I've had recently, you always hear the Fly Team, a part of the Fly Team within it.
I have noticed that, yeah. I definitely did notice that.
Exactly. So it'd either be at the start, it could be somewhere in it, but you'll always hear the Fly Team in it, usually at the beginning, and then they kick into the song. But the recent ones, the Kanye one was because, I don't know if you've seen his documentary recently, he had on Netflix, and the way that he started out, and he's kind of, on the grind, and he was a hustler, man. He was a hustler, and I like that mindset a lot, So at that time, again, it was quite close to the fight, and watching that was kind of inspiring me. So I took he had a choir version of Through the Wire. So a friend of mine is a DJ, and I asked him to put together the choir version and then change it into the full version and add the Fly Team, obviously, sound in there. And he put it together. A friend of mine called Short Time, Corey New, great DJ, check him out, man. But and then my last one, Push It to the Limit, Scarface. Again, it was kind of the mindset I was in, It was a big fight, big opportunity, and I was kind of in that mindset at the time, So it was like I push it to the limit, and then then I added it in. Obviously, one of the most popular songs from back in the day with my friends. Anyway, I'm a Boss Meet Mill, So it's a banger, man. Classical. It's a classic banger. So I had to throw that in there as well, and brought the energy up.
There's people in the crowd singing along with it. They cut it in the camera as well. There's another guy I can recommend you. There's a guy called Guru the Musical, and he does a lot of work. He can play the guitar, a bunch of other instruments, and he can edit together some stuff. So if you need some help with that, you can hit me up for that. Last thing I kind of want to touch on was outside of the big names in the middleweight division in the UFC, like Adesanya, Pereira, Whitaker, are there any guys who you've been a fan of and who may not be as well known, but you would like to fight going into the UFC, who you're kind of fans of and you want to test your style against?
I would say, yeah, there's definitely fighters that definitely say I've been watching them and then take kind of bits from what they do, and I admire their style. There's a fair few. Coming up, my number one. Like this is just I'm a very big like fan of this fighter. But John Jones is one of my main. When I first started MMA, I started watching John Jones, and I would sit and watch just hours of his fights, one after the other. Probably when I first started, I think I watched maybe 10 of his fights, but went back to back. And I really like that style, just because of his creativity and his freedom in there. And again, at the time, I think Anderson Silva was fighting at that time as well, still, before he retired. And yeah, that was great to watch. Again, I would study his tape as well. Again, at the moment, also Chimaev as well. I like his aggressive grappling style. It's interesting. Again, I can implement things in training that I see there, and I can learn from watching, right? Not only from learning from your coaches, but also watching. Makhachev as well, Islam Makhachev.
Yeah.
Watching the Khabib. Yeah, the list goes on, man. It's not only one style as well. You recognise it's not just one certain style. I like the whole thing of MMA.
I mean, speaking of John Jones, former opponent of John Jones, Stephen Bonner, just recently passed away. So, rest in peace. Yeah,
wow.
Just like a couple hours ago, man. Yeah, it's pretty tough.
Wow. Yeah, man. Rest easy, man.
One of the craziest fights in MMA history, Stephen Bonner, Forrest Griffin. That really got MMA back on the scene. But yeah, it does not surprise me at all to see that you take inspiration from John Jones. I think you can see a lot of that in your style. Out of range, when you come in, it's a lot of the spinning kicks and elbows and stuff. Last thing I want to touch on, another bit of a silly question. How do you make that flip in the cage look so effortless when you get in the cage? You know, the kind of like handspring thing you do. How do you make that look so effortless, man? Because it looks like you just float through the air. I don't know how you do it.
Just messing around, man. Just messing around at the gym, man. Just messing around at the gym. We just after class, you know, if we got a bit of energy left over, depending on if we're in camp or not. Yeah, man, just messing around. Try all sorts of stuff, you know. And that was one of the things. And part of our wrestling moments, our wrestling coach, he makes us do like handstand walks, kind of like these back flips, front flips, cartwheels, one-handed cartwheels. Yeah, man, it's very athletic. A warm-up. So yeah, that's kind of what I just like to mess around with, man. Again, like I said, just having fun, man.
Amazing, man. Like I said at the very beginning, thank you so much for doing this at this time. At this part that you just
no stress.
I genuinely do believe that I would be shocked if you retired without winning the UFC middleweight title. Like, you are at a different level of fighter, not just in the cage, but the way you carry yourself outside the cage. It's an inspiration how well spoken you are, and just the things you do outside your community, stuff like that, man. So I just want to say, from me, thank you for being who you are.
No, big respect, man. It's one thing you have to remember. It's still very, very early days, you know.
Of course, yeah.
So there's a long way to go, a long process ahead, man. But man, I respect the belief. I respect the belief 100%.
And that's the mindset right there that's got you so far. Like and subscribe, follow Christian Leroy Duncan, follow everyone that mentioned here. This guy is the future. Christian, I've enjoyed speaking to you, man. Hopefully I get to meet you in person someday, but yeah, being to speak to you, man. Have a good night, man.
Yeah, man, take care. Enjoy your Christmas, man. Happy New Year.